Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Compressed FM, a podcast all about web development and design with a little bit of zest. In this episode, we're going to have Nick Hodges talk about passkeys and moving away from passwords, getting into passwordless, and all that fun stuff.
Web development and design, who would have guessed? Well, we can do them both, even add a little zest. So turn up the volume, get ready for the best. Let's get it started in this episode of Compressed.
What's up, everyone? My name is James Q. Quick, and I am a full-time technical content creator. And I was at a conference with Amy, who's not here today, but we were at that conference. That's the name of it. Last week at the time of recording this, and got to meet Nick Hodges from Passage, and invited him on to be a guest on the podcast. So, Nick, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the stream. Do you want to introduce yourself and tell people a little bit about your background?
Sure. I appreciate being here. My name is Nick Hodges. I'm the developer advocate at Passage. I'd like to mention that we were recently acquired by 1Password, and that's been really great. Been enjoying that. We do passwordless authentication on web and mobile applications. My background is I'm a Minnesota boy who currently lives in Pennsylvania. And I've been a high school teacher, a naval officer, a consultant, a product manager. I was actually product manager at Borland for any old school folks out there who remember that late great company. And for the last few years, or all along, I was always doing conferences and attending meetups and presenting and really enjoying that. And then it was great that I figured out this developer advocate thing so I could get paid to do that, which is really, just proving to be quite nice. It's really great. So glad to be here, and I appreciate being on your podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a similar so I had actually started my career as a technical evangelist at Microsoft, and then for a few different reasons moved and switched jobs to work at FedEx as a developer and software engineer, and got into architecture as well. And I realized I was missing doing the things that you just talked about, creating content and going to conferences and that sort of stuff. So I started to do it, but I was doing it in my spare time. And then I made the decision that, similar to you, I think that like, hey, I want to get paid to do this full time and have this be my job, which is why I transitioned into All0 at the time, and then a few different things leading now to content creation. So what was any like specific background about you joining Passage? Like, how did you find them? Was authentication and identity and that sort of stuff, was that something you were already interested in?
Yeah, I mean, I've always hated passwords, right? I shouldn't. Passwords are effective in certain means, but the hassle of them, never really pleased me. And even when you use a password manager, it's still suboptimal. It's still the threat vector is pretty wide, pretty broad for even difficult passwords, even high entry passwords that a password manager creates for you. And so when I found this opportunity at Passage to take on as a mission to rid the world of passwords, I was quite eager to jump on board and find out about it and learn about it. And it's been really fun. I've enjoyed it. It's really been cool.
Yeah, that's really nice when you already have an interest in something, and then you get to find a role that actually matches that. That's part of what I talked about in my talk at that conference was, if you enjoy stuff enough, why not make that part of what you do on a daily basis?
Exactly. Yeah.
Do you want to elaborate on, I'm kind of curious if like the average consumer that just has passwords, if they think about some of the things that are difficult, because I think a lot of us, before looking at password and having used passwords for so long, it just kind of is the way it is. There's no other alternative. You just get used to it, I guess. So I think some people may not even realize some of the additional downsides to passwords. And you mentioned the threat vector. So
Sure.
what are some of the things that stand out to you as like difficulties with passwords, and then maybe getting into the security aspect of passwords as well?
Yeah. It's an interesting sort of sociological phenomenon, right? Is that I shouldn't say many people get the training at work, where they say pick complex passwords, don't repeat using passwords, don't have a pattern that you do every time you change it, like password 1 and then change it to password 2 and then change it to password 3 or
Been
whatever.
there.
Yeah. Yeah, throw a number in there, throw a character in there, upper lowercase. Those all complicate a process that people, generally speaking, don't want to necessarily do. Like and it's oftentimes you just want to log in, and or you just want to get registered, and sometimes you fight with it and things like that. And password managers, like password or some of the other ones, help, and uh, and then of course they help you. Then the websites realize that getting their passwords can get their passwords compromised. So we do two-factor authentication with the one-time pat, and that requires you to pick up your phone,
Hmm.
type in a number, or wait for a text that may or may not come right away. And I mean, there's just a lot of uh, uh, difficulty, challenge, frustration, especially with our short attention spans, right? Like a text that takes 10 seconds to show up, like, people get really mad if it takes 10 seconds for that one-time password to show up. And so the idea behind passwordless is just, I mean, I remember, the first phone I got that had a fingerprint reader on it, and my bank allowed me to log in with my fingerprint. And I was like, oh, this is so much better, right? I mean, it's like, oh, especially on the phone where, like, I have fat fingers and I'm always fat fingering stuff, and then they don't have that let me see my password option. So just touching the biometric on my phone was just a dream come true. I mean, it was like the way to go. And so, trying to create, realizing that passwords have a lot of friction involved with them, and the way to get around those friction is just makes you less secure, to the notion of just touching something with your thumb that's like way more secure, way easier on the end users, and easy for everybody is a really attractive thing.
So going back to like passwords, you kind of touched on this. Like, you get the training video when you start a new job. Don't use simple passwords. You see this, like, you see requirements in websites now when you generate passwords. Must
List
be
this
X number of characters. Must include a special character. Must include a number and a capital letter. And typically, what we do is we capitalize the first letter of the. We take the same password we've always had. We capitalize the first letter. We add a number on the end, and then we add an exclamation on the end. And like, hands up if people have gone through that. So the difficulty is, you want to have as complex a passwords as you can have. The
Hmm.
difficulty, though, is now if I'm creating a complex password, I have to remember that. Not to mention, across different sites and applications, I should create
Hmm.
unique passwords, and that's where the
Unique.
password managers come in. And for people who haven't used these, I use LastPass. We've kind of talked behind the scenes a little bit about me maybe doing a conversion to OnePass, because I've heard other, not just because of you, but other feedback from other people.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so what they do is they basically store all of your passwords for you. So if they have a good integration with your browser, when you go to sign up for something, you can have it
Right.
generate a password, save it for you, and you have one master password to remember, to then go and like see all of those. But for the most part, after that, it just autofills all your passwords for you, which is really nice. So like, as far as passwords go, that's definitely, I think, if you're using passwords, that's definitely the way to go across the board.
Mhm. Oh yeah, yeah. The generating the password is really the important thing. Um, uh, you want to, the phrase, the business, the term of art is entropy. You want a very high entropy password, and human beings basically cannot create manually high entropy passwords in a very effective way. And so, having a password generator do that for you is
Mhm,
a very valuable thing. But then, of course, the fact that they're high entropy makes them very difficult to memorize,
mhm.
and much less type. Even when you have to type it, you do three. You look at your phone and you do 3 characters at a time, because it's like, that's all you can do. But the password manager makes that really, really easy. And of course, even with a password manager, even using effective passwords and all of that stuff, passwords remain really vulnerable. So, uh, well, you can make it less vulnerable, but there's even ways that bad actors are getting around things like one-time passwords, and and the codes, 6-number codes and all that stuff. They're starting to beat that as well. And so that's what Passage was designed to do, was to, create a way to log into a website that is passwordless. And since they're passwordless, there's no vulnerability to password compromise. So.
Yeah, and the vulnerability piece, one of them is you hear about passwords getting leaked from companies. So in a database, passwords ideally are not stored in plain text. They are hashed and salted. So hash takes one thing and then transforms it into another. And then a salt, you can do different iterations of salt, which just like completely jumbles everything up so that people couldn't kind of reverse engineer passwords, because there is a potential that like passwords get leaked. They are not stored in plain text, but they could, like, I forget exactly how all the stuff works, but like rainbow tables and stuff to figure out common passwords, common algorithms for hashing them, and then figuring out based on what's in the database what those passwords actually are.
Right.
And anything that you can do to avoid that, obviously. When you mentioned, maybe we can do like one more step before we get into the true passwordless and passkeys, the idea of 2FA. So not double, two-factor authentication, multi-factor authentication. And this is, as you said, like I have a password, I log into something, but it wants to confirm that it's me with something else that I think it's three things: I know, or am intrinsically. Yeah. You want to talk about those three things and how those work?
Sure. The most common one everybody's familiar with, is the Authenticator, like Google Authenticator app that generates 6-digit codes for anything, and you scan the QR code, and it remembers that, and then you got to go to your phone and type in that, and that drastically improves security. But it still, A, there's a password, and B, there's, as I mentioned earlier, they're getting away from that, or hackers are getting into that. One of the ways they actually do it is they just bombard you with messages asking for the for the key, and all you got to do is tap and forward it to them to make them stop. That's one of the ways that they've been doing it. But multi-factor, two-factor authentication is very effective, and if you're not doing it on a website that provides it, I strongly recommend that you do.
A lot of them have made that a requirement now. Like, I think I've gotten something from GitHub, for example, in the past of like, you must set up 2FA.
And just as a side note, the most effective two-factor authentication is the number generator on your phone. That's most effective. A little less effective, but still better than nothing, is the email or texting of a one-time password, temporary one-time password. But because of the way that the phones work, people can simulate your SIM chip and get the numbers yourself if they're highly motivated. But any way to do multi-factor authentication is definitely the way to go.
Do you want to talk through maybe from there, like thinking about the codes that you get with Microsoft Authenticator, Google Authenticator, Twilio's got something, Auth0, I forget which is which. One of them has Authy. So there's other things there, but it's an app, as you said, that you install on your phone. So in that sense, it represents something you have, because you have that physical device with you. And so you log into a site, it will say, hey, go to your app, look at the code that's been generated, and now enter that here for us to verify you. So how does that process work? How is it able to confirm that token that was generated on the phone is appropriate for logging into the website?
So when you take your phone, and if you're going to set up two-factor authentication, generally speaking, the website will present you with a QR code that has embedded in it the information that enables the website and your phone to sync up in time, so that you both know what those numbers are, and so the website can say, well, I'm expecting this number and then the phone will provide that number, and then you type those 2 numbers in, and only you have that unique ID. So, and that unique code. So when those 2 are done in the same period of time, during the same gap of time, the website knows that it is indeed you, that it has that device that they set up for you and you set up with them. So it works pretty well. It is theoretically compromisable and hard to, but that's a little harder, obviously, than just plain up, straight up passwords. So
Compromisable in the sense of like not having like someone else getting access to your phone.
someone else could get access to, well, actually, yeah, if they have access to your phone, then they obviously can reproduce that. Or
Mm-hmm.
people are, I've heard stories of people having, people peering over their shoulder at an airport. I mean, there's all different kinds of things that I suppose could happen. But it is, I don't want to downplay it. It's very important to do. And I, again, stress that everybody should be doing that right now if they can. Obviously, I would advocate for websites and mobile apps to do, a passwordless web authent based solution, but two-factor, multi-factor authentication is certainly a very good way to protect yourself in many cases. Yeah.
You mentioned earlier like the send a text to yourself, which I never fully understood this, but I remember people really calling out that like text aren't actually, maybe they're not encrypted in transit or something. So there's the ability for those things to be intercepted and then used before, either maybe at the same time as when you get them, and they could go and use them at the same time to get those codes.
Yeah, and then somebody could send you a fake text with the wrong code. Somebody could ask you for your code, and then you give it to them over text. I mean, there's any number of ways that those things can be, phished.
Yep.
The classic phishing thing. I think that I don't know exactly how this happened, but the other day I was putting something on Facebook Marketplace, to sell, and within a minute and a half, I had somebody going, "Oh, I'm interested," and then they say, "But I want to make sure you are really who you are. Tell me what They wanted to send me a code and have me, send them
Really?
back a code. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, no. But
They
I
picked the wrong
actually was
person.
trying to think about. Well, clearly it was, and I looked it up on the internet. I Googled that, and apparently, that happens quite commonly.
Mhm.
I'm not sure how that. I was thinking about it. I'm not sure how that compromises something that I know, but I guess they're doing it for a reason. There must be some benefit in it. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, I feel like I'm always skeptical of stuff too, even if I don't see a direct way of how that could compromise something. But like one takeaway for the phishing stuff is always making sure that you're checking domain. So if you get an email from something that looks like Google or whatever, like make sure look on the actual email address, because usually you can tell if something's slightly off. But look at the
Mhm.
address and you can see if it's from the actual Google or whatever domain, and make sure it's from the appropriate person.
Yeah, the other thing I do is, like, if I get an email from eBay that says, "Update your account, please." I'll just
Mhm.
go, "Okay," delete the email, then go to the
Go
browser and
to
just go to
yeah,
myself, and you know,
and see if you
yeah,
get any notifications or something pop up in the site after you're logged in. Yeah.
exactly, yeah. So
Yeah, there's definitely, after working at Auth0 and kind of learning more about how some of this stuff works, I definitely have a different perspective on passwords and
mhm.
using sites and email and stuff. Not to say that I haven't gotten fooled by phishing something or other, but
Yep,
I try
yep.
not to.
Could happen. It happens to the best of us.
Mhm.
Happens to the best of us. Yeah. So
So what does like true passwordless look like? Like what does that flow look like when you sign up for a new product or website or something and you're doing true passwordless?
yeah. So the true passwordless thing is, it's almost too good to be true. Wait, no, did I get that backwards? It is true, but it seems too good.
Yeah.
Um, so basically, when you register, you go to a site and you type in a unique identifier, either an email for you or a phone number. And then depending upon how you have it configured, the normal flow would be, okay, you type in an email address, and then we want to make sure you have that email address. So we send you, the system will send you say a magic link which enables in your email. And then you click on that, and then that says, oh, yep, that email address, you have that. And then it comes back and says, do you want to register this device? You touch it with your thumb or your finger or your face, whatever it is. And then you're registered. That replaces the whole flow of type in your email address, type in a password that matches this criteria that we have, and then type it in again, and then register, and then get the email, then verify who you are, that kind of thing. So the whole step can be much quicker, and you can do it with a phone number too. They'll send you a text, you click on the link, and that. So then when you come to log in, you just chances the system probably has remembered your unique identifier. You just touch your phone or show your face or whatever, and you're logged in. And that happens in seconds. When I'm in a conference, I have people do our demo, and I claim that you can be logged in, and you can be registered and logged in less than a minute. And if I were really brave, I'd say less than 30 seconds, but it's a very quick process, and it doesn't require any passwords at all. There's no password involved at all anywhere within the system. And it's quite effective, and it's nice because 100% of the people that see it like it, right? Nobody says to themselves, no, I don't really want to touch my thumb here. Instead, I want to type in a very complicated password. I mean, nobody does that, right? Everybody loves, touch the phone and you're done. Or, it works with Windows Hello on your laptops, or on your MacBook with the Apple system as well. So yeah, it works great. It's almost I said, it's almost going to be true because it's way more secure. I mean, it's like orders and orders of magnitude more secure, and it's much, much easier on your users. Like, that sounds too good to be true, but it is. So yeah,
I think a lot of it is adoption. I think that's a big part of it. And you mentioned like nobody wants to do the other way. I didn't do my thumb for a long time, like to unlock my iPhone and stuff. Just I don't know, as if the FBI, as if I'm like a wanted criminal and my fingerprint actually means anything, even if they did sell it to the FBI or whatever. So I think some of it's adoption and people just getting more comfortable with that sort of stuff. Some of it still is people being on older devices, like thinking about an older generation that maybe doesn't have a smartphone, or they've got an older smartphone, or doesn't have Windows Hello or whatever. So there's a few like scenarios where I think it makes sense that people haven't gone to it, but it certainly is convenient when you do have it set up. But these are those digital fingerprints. So like actual fingerprint or like eye recognition, whatever it is that you use to log in, those are per device, right? So
correct.
I have to, like, if I log into my phone, that doesn't guarantee that I'm able to log in the browser.
Correct. Yeah.
Like a browser on a desktop.
Browser on a desktop. Yeah. So, the strict, so the whole passwordless system is based on a protocol that's, I think the official name is, the FIDO Alliance, which stands for Fast ID Online Alliance Web Authentication Protocol, but everybody just calls it Web Authn. And the official way of that is that each device has its own unique identifier built into the trusted platform module, if you will. And so the key thing to remember is the actual data of your thumbprint is I'll just use thumbprint because that's what I do, but is stored inside the phone, inside that TPM, and that's considered impregnable at this particular juncture. Like, nobody can conceive of a way to impregnate it, but that's not the right word. No one can break into it, and nobody can conceive of it. That doesn't mean it doesn't happen. I'm not crazy enough to say, well, it'll never happen. I mean, somebody may figure it out, but nobody can conceive of it right now of any real effective attack vector. So the way that the systems that Apple and Google and Microsoft have set up is they actually have a system whereby they enable the TPM to share that passkey. They don't lock it to the device, which is a very small crack in the security model. But then they allow that. Then they end-to-end encrypt that and put it up in the cloud, and then that it's in the cloud, and then it can be shared down to other devices.
Hmm.
So the flow would be like you register on your phone, put your thumbprint on there, you go to your window or your iPhone, and then you go say to your MacBook and sit down, type in the same identifier. The system will go, oh, I see that you have a passkey for this site. Do you want to use it? And then you say yes, and the system will log you in. Mac OS will log you in that way. Now the challenge comes when you have, say, a MacBook Pro and a Android phone, or probably more commonly, people have a Android phone and a Windows box, right? A Windows desktop, or a Windows laptop. So those challenges are being worked on, and the notion of sharing a passkey across ecosystems, like outside of Google into Windows, kind of thing, is something that companies are working on, trying to figure out how to do that. But as of right now, you can share passkeys in an end-to-end encrypted way, very, very safe. Apple doesn't know anything about your information. It just shares it end-to-end encrypted in a way that's, and I understand people don't want to depend on those companies, perhaps, but it does work, and it ends up being a really cool way to make things work.
I didn't know that Apple had any device to device capabilities, because one of the things that's interesting with that is, like, on my iPhone, I guess it would be if they have the same setup, because on my iPhone I do eye recognition or face recognition now, versus on my MacBook it's fingerprint. And even if you did, I think back when the iPhone did fingerprint, and I don't even know if I did that, to be honest. I think it's thumbprint, right? It was thumb, not finger. So those would you'd have to account for, even if you have one input on an iPhone, it may not be the same input that you would use on a MacBook.
Correct. Yeah. So the input itself is device specific. Your thumbprint on your phone or your fingerprint on your MacBook or whatever is device specific. And that information is very, very specific to the device, but it can be married up with a passkey to enable you to access and log into a site when the device matches the passkey that has been transferred via the cloud. Does that make sense?
Yes. I don't know if, I guess I haven't seen that then. I don't think I don't know that I've seen that in any of my login through my Apple devices.
Really? Okay. Well, you have to enable it, I think. I'm not an Apple guy.
Yeah.
I'm an Android
I'm not
Windows
sure.
guy.
Interesting. Yeah.
Not sure if you have to enable it or not. That's a good question. Yeah.
There's a question in the chat about YubiKeys. So that is now an additional thing that still has that same relationship with the operating system and or with the browser, but is a physical device that you kind of leave plugged in. And as long as that thing is there, and some of those have fingerprints on them, then then you can kind of get the same benefit and not have to use. I guess that would be a solution to computers, for example, that don't support fingerprints or face scan, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's really. I'm not a YubiKey expert, but in conception, it's basically the same thing as just having a phone. But it does plug in and automate the process. Yeah, it makes it more convenient. And convenience
convenience with security is.
Yes, with the security. Yeah. I mean, often, so we were talking about earlier, convenience with passwords is less secure, but convenience with the passwordless system is just as secure. So that's one of the benefits. Yeah.
Jess T mentioned using a YubiKey earlier. I had gotten a YubiKey for my last job, and I had it plugged in for a while, and I never used it. And I don't know, again, probably maybe like one of those adoption things. I never ever used it, and maybe that was partially because of having the fingerprint on the Mac, where I was used to doing it where Mac has it anyway. So I ended up taking it out and not using it. But again, great solution for if you don't have some of the biometric stuff built into a physical device that you use.
Yeah.
A conch on YouTube is asking, or can it be multiple fingerprints and different series to unlock, like thumb first, then finger? I've never heard of anything like that, like a series of prints.
I haven't seen that, but there's no reason that could not be the case. And that would be device specific, right? the protocol, the passwordless protocol doesn't care how you identify the device, identify yourself to the device. So if it
Hmm.
is a system that had 3 fingerprint, you had to do all 5, or a hand print, a palm print, eyeball, ear. Some people have said that your ears are unique enough to be able to
Are they really?
identify. I I just know
According,
what I read.
wow, okay.
I don't believe everything I read on the internet, but
Oh, Jess
Um,
has a good point in the comments. She uses her MacBook closed, so she uses her MacBook in like shell mode or
mhm,
whatever, where you have it plugged up
mhm.
to your monitors, use an external keyboard. So, yeah, that's I think Martin on YouTube is commenting the same thing. Having those like even with your MacBook closed, that's a really good point because I leave mine open. I've got 2 monitors, and then my third monitor is my actual MacBook, and I just type on the
Right,
built-in
right.
keyboard, which a lot of
Uh,
people hate. The newest one is actually like it's good enough, and I've never been into like the mechanical keyboard
yeah.
hype.
Oh yeah.
I've never gotten into it, so
Oh yeah.
I have my laptop here. I've got my
You gotta
sensor,
have
yeah, the basic, yeah. Um, so that's a great point. I leave my MacBook open at all times while I'm working, as opposed to lots of people do exactly what she's saying, of have it in clam mode. I think it's what it's called, or shell mode, clamshell
it.
mode,
So,
and then have it connected to the monitor. So that makes perfect sense.
so I do the same with my Windows machine, my Dell. It's
Mm,
closed, and so Windows Hello has the alternative of a pin,
mhm.
and it's not your fingerprint, but again, it's a number that I have in my head that never leaves my machine, so nobody can it can't be compromised because that information never leaves my machine. So
Mhm. Unless, like, going back to some of the things you mentioned earlier, somebody's looking over your shoulder in a coffee shop or something.
correct, yeah, theoretically that could do it, yeah, yeah. So
And I guess that's again one of the differences between that sort of input versus the bio stuff, because
mhm,
nobody's going to be able to replicate your finger from watching you use your finger to log in to
correct, yeah.
a site. And people had the question earlier, which I think is a natural way to take the conversation, or a natural question that people have is
Mhm.
like, don't you, if you get kidnapped, like this is getting kind of serious, but like they could use your finger and force you to open up um, your laptop or phone or whatever.
Okay. Yeah, that's absolutely true. There's no denying that. Uh, then everybody says, well, if they're that intent on it, I think the quote I've heard is, "No password ever survived a sharp blow to the knee with a baseball bat."
Yeah.
So I mean, the, if you feel confident that that you're not to be morbid or crazy or anything, but if you feel confident that you can resist all attempts to get them to give up your password, then so be it. But really, ultimately, it boils down to what what's your threat risk, right?
Hmm.
Um, and I live in America. My threat risk is pretty low, in the sense that I'm not too worried about being kidnapped. I'm not too worried about. I mean, I should worry, I suppose, about the police taking my phone. One thing I remember, you don't have to unlock your phone with your thumb. You can actually do the pattern
Hmm.
or a passcode number,
True.
and they can't compel that. They can compel you to put your finger on the phone. So,
Oh,
but
really?
yeah, well, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not giving any legal
Fair
advice
enough.
here,
Yeah.
but my understanding is that they can compel you to provide physical stuff, like they
Biometric
can
stuff. Yeah.
biometric. They can compel biometrics. Yeah.
But
Um,
not the.
and again, if you got to make your own decision about how much of a threat factor. If you're a dissident in Iran, you might have a much different view of passwords and biometrics than you do if you're a developer advocate in Westchester, Pennsylvania. You know, my, you know, for me personally, my passwords are a much bigger threat to my security than my thumb. I'm not too worried about being
Mhm.
kidnapped and having somebody force me to put my thumb on my phone. But everybody's different, and I totally understand that
Yep.
some people are concerned about that, and I'm sure they should be if they are. So
Yep. Yeah. Talk to me, Gooseman on YouTube commented, if people wanted to kidnap you, I think you have bigger problems to worry about, which is absolutely. I don't think I have anything of value enough to be like targeted kidnapped. I also, for what
right,
it's worth, would not withstand any torture. So
Well,
You
yeah.
just have to ask me nicely with the threat of torture, and I will happily give up my password.
Yeah, I don't know that anything behind my password is that important. I mean, my
Hmm.
even my bank account, right? I mean, it,
Ideally,
I don't want my bank account cleaned out,
yeah,
but I would give up my bank account password to avoid
to
a
survive it.
lot of
Yeah,
things. Yeah, yeah. So yeah.
interesting how password discussion takes a turn to more.
It's interesting. I talk a lot about it, obviously, and everybody's always talking about, well, what if they kidnap you? What if
Hmm.
they take your thumb?
Yeah,
Or what if? Yeah. So it's
and you
different.
see that on like a lot of movies have had that for years. I
Oh yeah.
remember
Yeah.
in not the Da Vinci Code, the other one, the Angels and Demons, I think it is, or
Mhm.
one of those movies. They have where they actually cut out somebody's eye to go and do the retina
Right.
scanner. And that's been in
Well,
movies for a while, like probably years before they
right.
were actually available. Sorry, what?
Cruz in Minority Report, he got that.
Hmm.
He switched his eyes out with somebody
Yeah,
else so that the retinal scanner at the grocery store wouldn't say, "Good morning, Mister whatever
yeah.
your name is," when you walk up and look at the camera.
There's a lot of I've heard of. I don't know that this actually happened, but I've heard of technology that would do something like have facial recognition at a grocery store, exactly like you said, and then like send you maybe potentially like coupons to your phone specifically
Oh
for
yeah,
things that they know you've bought in the past or that you might be interested in, which is really, really interesting.
right. Yeah, yeah,
Parasocial effects mentioned also having two or three factors, so it gets harder to get everything together. Interesting thing
yeah.
about that, like the three factors are typically something something you have physical, and or something
Mhm.
you are, which is biometrics, something that's intrinsic to
Right,
you.
right. Yeah,
Interesting thing about any combination of those two, again, not to take like the morbid side of this, but like legitimate questions. If people if I have two-factor enabled where I have a password and I have a fingerprint, again, if somebody's kidnapped me, I'm probably going to give up that password, and then they're going to be able to use the fingerprint, which I'm like no worse
right.
off than I was just having passwords anyway. So like in those extreme cases, having 2 to 3 factors, they probably still have access to 2 or 3 of those factors, but
Yeah,
we'll
there's
see.
another thing that pops up all the time is there's a case where a politician held his hand up, and somebody took a picture of such high resolution that they were able to reproduce a
Oh,
graphic
wow.
image of his fingerprint.
Wow.
And okay, great, but then in order to compromise that, then you'd have to have his phone as well. And so and if they did that, I mean, it's going to happen. But the flip side is if you're using password one as your password,
Yeah.
password one exclamation point as your password, you are in a bad way if somebody even remotely hints or believes that that's what your password is.
Mhm.
I mean, brute force attacks will break that account, right?
Yep.
With password one. That
Oh,
so
very, very easily with that one. Yeah.
again, it depends on you. If you feel like you've got good password hygiene and are using high entropy passwords, and you feel like your risk is minimal to have someone try and uh, extract your password from you by coercion, then you know passwords are for you. My father, on the other hand, 87-year-old father, God bless him, if he could touch his MacBook instead of trying to remember his Apple ID password, he would be infinitely better off.
Mhm.
So well, infinitely is a strong word, but he'd be much better off, right? I mean,
Um,
it's a much better solution. And again, depends on what you want. Yeah.
and I think that's part of the good thing about all this stuff too is just the education. Like not telling
Yeah.
people this is what you have to do. Like you can have your own thoughts and opinions and but also just make sure that people
Make
have the
sure that people have
understanding
the
of like
understanding of
here's
like
the trade-offs of different options that we have.
right. And so, for instance, to get into our console, if you're a customer of ours, user using our solution, to get into our console, you have to use the passwordless, our passwordless solution. We drink
Mhm.
our own champagne, obviously. So we as a company don't have to worry about the risk of being hacked, and having our password database revealed, and then potentially have bad actors get a hold of somebody's password, get a hold of somebody's account, and all the liability and all that stuff that comes along with that. Our company, passage.id at our website, we don't have to worry about that. We don't have, so having a passwords on your personal website is a certain liability that companies, and then you have to deal with changing the password, managing the password, customer service calls for people who can't log in. Those all are drastically reduced. In addition, I think the number is 38% of all shopping carts on the web are abandoned because of login issues, registration and login issues. That's a lot of items in shopping carts that are not purchased because you have to follow a very specific password route, kind of thing.
Once you can join it, or once you can tell that story in a financial way for applications and companies, it starts to hit a lot more home. There's a couple of good comments. So AJC said on Twitch, I think the real question for passwordless login is, does it make things easier for just devs, or does it also make things easier for users? As someone who always has my email open, for me, the answer is yes, but I've heard from others it's considered a hassle. I'll give like one example for me that it's specifically with logging in to Gmail on my phone. Is I get this thing where I get an email to view something in Google. I click the link. I'm all on my phone. I'm already logged into Gmail on my phone, but I click the link. It takes me to log in. It then prompts to send an email to my email, like notification to pop up to confirm it. And then I go back, and then I've also already entered a password. And then at some point in the process, almost inevitably, it fails. So I think some of the flows, especially with 2FA, I've definitely noticed, and I've been an advocate for that sort of stuff, obviously for security reasons, but there definitely have been plenty of opportunities where it has seemed much more complex to me, especially for other people that don't have the understanding of here's why we're doing it and here's the security benefits that it gets us. So I think some of those flows can be more complicated. And I have been in a situation in the past where I've entered a password, done all this other stuff, and I'm like, why couldn't I just like be done at the password?
Right. Or, the way I like to think of it is it's a very big improvement on the end user. The customer who comes to your site to log in and all they have to do is touch something with their finger is a much smoother, easier, and desirable system and much process and workflow than type the password, grab your phone, look at the number, memorize it, type it in, and now you're logged in. I mean, there's context switches there. Sometimes you have to go check your email. Sometimes you have to go check your text app. Here, you come to the site, type in your unique identifier, your email or whatever, touch the button on your computer, and you're in. There's no context switch. Much easier, much smoother. I, as a user, prefer that. I mean, if I have the opportunity to use biometrics on a website, I totally do, right? I mean, I don't have to remember a password. I don't have to change contexts, whatever. And as far as the developers, we're in the business of making it as easy as possible on developers. And, you can be up and running with our demos in 20 minutes or less, and 9/10 of that demo is building a framework in Angular or Vue or whatever framework you happen to be using. Right. The actual addition of our stuff is basically adding a web component reference in your HTML. So,
do you want to do just another minute on Passage specifically and what that integration looks like for developers?
Sure. If you want to try passwords or passwordless login, and that you can go to passage.id, https://passage.id/demo. And there you can type in your email or a phone number. And that phone numbers work worldwide. We work pretty hard to make sure that basically every valid phone number works. And you can be registered and logged in less than a minute. And I'll say it might even be going quicker than that. Basically, by default, if you can identify yourself uniquely with an email and your thumbprint or whatever it is that you're using to identify yourself on your phone or your laptop. You can be logged in and then registered and logged in, and very, very quickly. It's a very smooth process. And our site, our demo site there, explains everything that's going on and how it all works and the basics and everything like that. So, the implementation of that is literally just embedding a web component with a single tag, single HTML tag, passage, open bracket, passage dash auth, close bracket, in your site. The web component is completely customizable in terms of colors and how it's embedded and things like that. Thanks for you. I saw you put the link in there for our React demo, that kind of thing. I appreciate that. We have examples for Angular, Vue, React, and Next.js, I think. And
there's a lot.
Yeah.
There's a good amount.
So and our at docs.passage.id, we have a getting started demo that makes it pretty easy. Basically, all you need from us is create an application and get a unique identifier for that app ID, and you embed that in your environment variables for your app. And once you have that, then you can enter in an origin and a destination URL, and you're up and running, and very, very quickly. It's very, very easy to do. So I'd encourage everybody to give it a look, both on the code side and the demo side. I appreciate the people taking a look and see what happens.
Yeah. I'm curious so I mentioned earlier, like the idea of an older generation, maybe they don't have a more recent smartphone. Maybe they don't have a more recent laptop that has these sort of things and YubiKeys, et cetera. Is that a conversation that people bring up? Like, are people ever like, oh, I'd love to do this, but I target a generation. I mean, I don't know what the appropriate example is. Like, I run a site for a nursing home or something like that.
I understand. Yeah.
Like that just wouldn't be a good fit, I imagine, is the answer.
Well, we have a backup. The current backup is a magic email link. We call them magic links. I think there's a term I'm supposed to be using that isn't that, but we send you an email.
Okay.
And in that email has a unique link that, it only works for 10 minutes and it only works once. You click it and you're logged in. And so you can do that every time. Or we can send you a text as well. And that's easier than remembering a password, but you do have to go and check your email. There's, but that's the backup. The primary, again, is the biometric authentication.
Cool. So you have that already in place.
Yes. Yeah.
Cool.
And we're looking at adding one-time passwords as a backup as well. So we send you a code versus a magic link. So
sweet. And I don't know if the answer to this is yes or no or not, but just out of curiosity, so you're the one developer advocate at Passage. Is there the idea that team may grow? And just as a shout out for you, is Passage hiring? If so, we can let people know to check out any existing or open roles.
Yeah. So Passage was acquired in November by 1Password. And so we are kind of a little entity inside of 1Password. And 1Password has got a big push to go passwordless, both in all aspects of the ways that they can do it. They want to support passkeys moving between devices and things like that. If you want to find out more about that, you can go to future.1password.com. There's some information there, and you can you can log in with a passkey and all that fun stuff there as well. And Passage, we sort of remain on the development team. We're hiring, looking for new developers to expand. I think there's a careers link on our website. And if you want to get in touch with me, actually, I'd be happy to refer you for the referral bonus. That will work. You can get me at nick@passage.id. But we're a small startup-y type team that makes things happen pretty quickly. It's a really, really sharp bunch of people, and it's really fun to be involved with them because we're making things happen pretty quickly and moving forward. And 1Password's taken up the mantle as well, so it's worked out really well. It's been great. Good company. 1Password. Really, really enjoying it. Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah, I was really excited for you thinking about we were talking about going through acquisition from a smaller company like Passage
Hmm.
and how that must
Hmm.
be a pretty I don't know, pretty exciting time, I would think financially, but also um from like having been a part of building something or like sharing about something and to have it go through acquisition is a really cool feeling. So I
Yeah,
always thought that
it
was
was a
a
thrill. It was great.
yeah.
It was a really, really good feeling. One Password is a great home for this
Mhm.
technology. I'm really excited.
Well, I was talking in the chat about the infinite amount of backlog items I have. One of them is to look at exporting out of LastPass to 1Password. So
Mhm.
I will keep you up to date on if I make any of those changes. And I think it would
I
make for
appreciate
an
that.
interesting YouTube video too to talk about why and maybe call out the like show the migration path and that sort of stuff. So
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's very straightforward. And if I may, we are currently paying the rest of your LastPass,
cool.
um, the remainder of your LastPass subscription. We're crediting you that. So
Hmm.
if you
Yeah,
sign up
that's
for one,
awesome. Yeah, because
yeah.
I think I've got I paid a year in advance. I don't know when that is up actually. So I paid $60 I think for the year with LastPass. I can't remember how much it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's good to know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. All right.
All right.
We will go ahead and wrap up. Thanks everybody for listening and watching the episode. If you're listening in your podcatcher on your mobile device, most likely, or on your computer, please leave a rating and review to help other people find the podcast as well, so that I say we, myself, Amy, and Brad, who is our third co-host, so that we can continue to do fun episodes in the future and have guests on like Nick. So please leave a review. As always, we appreciate all the support and people listening in, watching in. So thanks, everybody. In the meantime, that's all we got. That's the official end. I have to always clarify this for people. We're still live, but that's like the official end of what will be on the audio.
No problem. No problem.
that way we
So,
have that way we don't have to go like record a separate ending later on, if that makes sense.
yeah. Yeah. Indeed. Well, I appreciate
Sweet.
it. Thank you very much. This was fun, and I appreciate you having me.
Yeah. I on for people that are on Twitch, I'm gonna raid you over to Jen's channel. So I'm gonna send everybody on Twitch that way in about 10 seconds. Again, thanks everybody for being here, hanging out. I will raid everyone over there, and we'll see you later.